is anybody that has been or is actively practicing real love, please stand up. Okay? Anybody that's ever made a real love phone call, stay standing. Anyone that's ever taken a real love phone call, stay standing. Anyone that is a host and that is actively running groups, stay standing. Okay, so take a look around. These are people who are devoting their lives to helping people learn these principles. Anybody that's a real love coach, stay standing. So we have all these different layers. There's Garvin. Okay, and at the end, we're going to introduce all these people who are supporting this community here in Phoenix. We actually have the largest real love community in the world right here in Phoenix. Tons of groups going on. It's kind of the epicenter of real love, and it kind of trickles out from here. But Mister's going to put on a little bit of a DVD, and what it is Greg was the keynote speaker for Asylamar last year. Does everybody know what Asylamar is? All the Science of Mind practitioners and ministers, they all get together on the coast up in California at this really pretty resort, and they do a week-long conference, and it's all kinds of prayer work and meditation and speakers and things like that go on. Last August, it's every August, Greg was the keynote speaker, and he was brought in to speak about real love. So I want you to see just 5 minutes of it, and it kind of sets the stage for what we're going to talk about today.
I wrote a really brilliant talk. I just wanted you to know. And a really great set of PowerPoint slides. No kidding. They're really good. About a month ago, I did a presentation similar to this at MIT. Those of you who are from the West Coast, that's the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And you know, I was going to do very similar to that presentation here. And then I heard David refer to the dining hall as Cracker Hall. And I'm thinking, we got to dial this down a notch or two, you know? Cracker Hall is where David's family lives. We were having a discussion backstage, and we were talking about the writings of Epictetus, and he said, it's Epictetus. I said, you eat at Cracker Hall. How would you know? So I'm really not going to give that talk. We're going to love, okay? And there's the seal of approval right there. It's all there is. And if you haven't figured that out yet, we're going to try to figure that out while you're here, okay? I watched an interview not long ago where a man was being interviewed by the host, and he had been in prison for 18 years for something he had not done. They had then done the research and proved it with evidence and DNA and blah, blah, blah. 18 years. So in your head, for a second, I want you to picture going back and eliminating the last 18 years of your life. But you don't get just to go back and neutralize it. You have to go back and live in hell for 18 years. Any of you here ever either been to prison or regularly worked in prisons, as I have? Okay, they ain't all that fun. 18 years of that. Is there anybody here who would volunteer for even 1 year of that? No? No volunteers? Y'all just no fun. Is there anybody here who'd volunteer for a lifetime of it? So here's the secret. I'm not kidding you. If you get what I'm about to tell you, it will change the rest of your life forever. "99% of us have already been in prison for our whole lives. We're there now. We're in prisons that we didn't build. We're in prisons for crimes we did not commit. We are surrounded by bars we cannot see, with a door we cannot see, and with a key that we cannot see, and it's this far outside through the bars. And we're missing the whole thing. And the answer ain't in the law." I talked to a couple of really old science of mind scholars, older than David. And they were saying that toward the end of his life, Ernest Holmes said, I wish I'd talked more about love and less about the law. You know what people use the law for? People use the law to control the people and things around them so they'll feel safe. That's what they do. It never works. Hear me? Ever.
Okay. Greg is talking about a prison that we live in, and it's our pain. And what we're going to talk about today is a mystery. Has anybody, raise your hand if you've ever been hurt? Someone's done something and you just felt so hurt. And you spend a lot of time in your mind circulating around, talking about wondering why. How many of you spend time in the why? Why are they doing what they're doing? Why do I do what I do? Why is my life a mess? Why do I not feel happy? All that why. We're going to dispel some of those myths today. What we're going to be talking about is, what Greg has done is he has really lasered in and put a languaging to why we do what we do so that we can communicate it and we can learn to have more compassion for others. When we can clearly see others, we can learn to love them. Okay? When we can see about what we do ourselves and why we do it, we can find that key he's talking about of getting out of our pain. My story, and this is where I kind of get really weepy, is Greg came to New Vision Center years ago. It was 8 years ago. And at the time, this is my son in the little pink shirt over here. This is Shane. And I was a mess in my life. I had been in a ton of pain, fear and confusion, quite a mess. I was overachieving in some areas, and some areas were just shit. Horrible, spiraling. I was such a well-intentioned mom, but by the time he was 13, 14 years old, it was right around that time, he's going into, adolescence, and he was a very angry child. And parents walk around wondering, why are their children so angry? Well-intentioned mom. I was doing for him. I was providing for him. He was on the #1 top team in America for soccer. And I was paying money for all this travel and just, being a mom. And that kid was in pain. He was in so much pain that he was punching holes in walls. I was replacing doors in the house. He'd get so angry at me that he would sit on the sofa, put his feet on the coffee table, and kick it across the room. Called the cops on him twice. I was spiraling out of control. Didn't think I could handle him. And he may not know this, but I had bought him a ticket to send him to his dad's. His dad lives in Guam. It would have ruined his career. Who knows what kind of abandonment issues there would have been there. I had no idea how to take care of this boy. And Greg Bear came to town that weekend, and I went. And I was in a relationship at the time where I'd gone to a wine tasting with this person I was with. And we were fighting. We were fighting all the time. And a gentleman walked up to me and said, blah, 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 real love. And I went, can you go over across the room and tell that to that guy over there? Because we're at the end. We're tanking. And he did. And at New Vision Center at the time, there was a men's group and a women's group. And so it was in the very beginning, Reverend Michelle really believed in the real love. And we both went to a group. I walked in to that first group that first week, and it was actually right before Greg came to town, and I went, oh my God, look what I've done to everyone I've ever loved. And he walked out and said, look what she does to me. We were done. We were over. I went to this seminar. It was all Friday night, a session in the morning Saturday, a session in the evening Saturday afternoon, and then a session again on Sunday afternoon. So it was a full weekend workshop. And Greg was really teaching the principles, and I went, oh my God, I've got to save my life. I canceled that ticket. By Sunday evening, I had him in the seminar, and the last part of it was a basic 101, which we're going to talk about today. And at that point, I went, wow, I really need to change my life. I'm in a lot of pain, and I need to save his life. I need to save his life. I don't know how to love him. So we started way back when with not a lot of groups, struggling groups. I became the coordinator at New Vision Center for the Real Love groups. I started running groups. All of these people that you see that are hosts came into the community. They learned to do the same thing that I was capable of doing, and now we've just added groups all over the valley. So you'll be introduced to the hosts later. But what I did, we didn't have a lot of support back then. All I knew was that I needed to read the books. I got out the Real Love and Parenting CDs, and I listened to them constantly. And every time I listened to it, I realized how unloving I really was. What did it really look like to parent someone? And so slowly but surely, we started to change the face of this relationship. And I watch this young man now, and he's probably one of the better men I've ever met in my whole entire life. Shane, you've done a great job. I watch this kid walk around embodying it everywhere he goes, silently teaching, silently loving people, being there for others. And it's amazing how just even when I'm beside myself that he'll just take me and he'll put his arm around me and he'll say, I don't think you're feeling loved right now, Mom. Let me give you a hug. It's just really amazing compared to him at 14 years old screaming at me saying he's never, ever going to talk to me ever. So we have an amazing relationship right now. And so I'm really thankful to Greg. And so let's look at the next slide. We're going to move through these pretty quickly. There's a bunch of slides. What's going to happen today is we're going to stop, and when we come to into the slide presentation, we're going to have some of our hosts kind of position themselves throughout the room, and you're going to practice doing just a little practice of what you might see in a Real Love group, so you can kind of experience it and see what we do. So I'll say we're going to have a breakout session. The host will kind of go to different areas, and you can just kind of go. If there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people in each group is fine, or 10. You want to keep it about that. And then we're going to do a little exercise. But we're going to go into the principles to dispel the mystery of why people do what they do. So there is no more mystery. When you walk out of here today, you never have to ask yourself ever again, why do people do what they do? They're in pain, okay? So Greg was talking about in prisons that we don't build. We're talking about when we're children, we actually get programmed. Our parents can say things like life is hard. Money doesn't grow on trees, all kinds of things that we're just programmed. We could be getting messages every time they roll their eyes at us that we're worthless. We're an inconvenience. They wish we were never born. We get all kinds of messages when we're growing up. All of that programming creates this myth. Here, we walk around thinking that we have the ability to be at choice, which is really not the truth. We have free will. But we are absolutely unconsciously programmed to knee-jerk into behaviors that cause our own demise in our life because of the past programming. We think we have choices, but we are driven by our pain. We are driven constantly by the need to minimize our pain. Unconsciously, that's what we're doing all the time. So the real love practice is how do we use a languaging to get out of that? How do we learn how to be different? Because we were really not taught as kids how to look at life from a happy perspective. What are the steps to getting there? We'll talk about that today. Next slide. So first off, we have to kind of just define what real love is. And everyone in the world goes, oh, love is romantic. Love is, oh, I love you, and all these feelings. Real love, the basic principle, is caring about someone else's happiness without wanting anything in return. On a very human level, I don't know if we can ever be God-like and never want anything back. There's an innate need in us to be what we call trading. You know, when we're at our very worst, we are controlling, we are trying to take what we want. It's very unloving in those actions. But so caring about another person's, okay, so yes, next slide. Okay, so there's only one kind of love, real love. Everything else is counterfeit. So in real love, anything that we do that's unloving, we call imitation love. This is the imitation trading that we do. Through no fault of our own, few of us have either received or given much real love in our lives. It's not our faults. So when we get real factual about our behaviors that's unloving, in real love, we do it from a perspective, there's no criticism. When we can get real factual about how we're showing up in our relationships, then we can do something about it. So everything is without criticism, without blame. You can go back and you can blame your parents. Well, why blame them? Because they had parents too. So you notice we take all the criticism out of it, and we just want to get really factual about what's going on in our lives so we can really make those changes. Because ultimately the bottom line is, what can we do differently? We're in this place of unhappiness. What is it that we can do differently? Now, you guys were handed, I think, getting and protecting behavior sheets. No, they weren't handed out yet. Okay, that's fine. There's also another sheet that you'll be given in the breakout session that's just kind of like a little commitment sheet to yourself. What are you learning today? What could I do differently? And at the end, you're going to sign it, take it home, and look at some steps that you might be able to do to change your life, to just get started. Maybe I just want to go to a real love group. Maybe I want to stop yelling at my son. Little steps like that that you pull out of today that you can take home with you. So you'll get those in the little breakout session. Next slide. So when we look at the statistics of what's happening in our today's life, this isn't pretty. You guys can take a look at this. And even here, 30% of ninth graders have already had 4 or more sexual partners. These statistics are terrible. So it is, what can we do differently? Okay. I was talking to someone, what is your name? In the glasses right here. Yes. Tina, hi, welcome. So Tina was telling me that the reason why she's here today is because she saw someone else in her life that had been going to some real love groups, and from the outside vision, she goes, man, their life is changing. Don't get it. Wow, I better go check this out. So you'll actually see people changing their lives. 10% of all males will spend time in prison. It's not really a pretty picture. Next slide. So what's going on? Okay, so the way that I look at it is that there's no blame, but there is this idea that if I grew up with a certain pair of parents that I did, they had a certain emotional language that they used. And so I'm just going to call it English. And it's all they knew. And however they taught me to see this world, a lot of it was from a victim perspective, from pain, from their own pain. I learned English. So real love is like thinking about it this way. It's like learning a new language. It's like learning Spanish, okay? Not only just a new language, a whole new way of being, but if you think of it like learning Spanish. So I could get the Real Love book, and I could say, I'm reading a book about the Spanish language. It doesn't make me fluent in the language, okay? So I can get the CDs and I can listen to it in my car, and I can say, I can practice como está usted, but I'm not going to become fluent, okay? I can think about maybe taking trips down to Mexico and, practicing my Spanish with the shop owners, and I come back and I go, gee, I don't get it, I'm still not fluent, okay? Real love practice itself, just to kind of give you guys an idea, is like immersing yourself and moving to Spain for a while. So in order to change my son's life and my life and totally turn our life around, we had to completely immerse ourselves in this new language, okay? To really embody and start to live where we're knee-jerking here all the time versus what we were taught. So this concept that we started out life with fear and confusion, to kind of dispel the mystery. If you ever see anybody in fear, they're in confusion. If anyone's in confusion, they're in fear. And that causes us to not be able to see, make decisions, be on task, living to our potential. All of that stuff stems from the fact that we grow up with fear and confusion. Next slide. This is a representation of how we grow up. So we have this little fear meter in us, okay? Let's say you've got a mom and dad that yell and fight with each other, but they never yell at the kids, okay? That little fear meter is going off. It's still going off. Maybe they've never been yelled at themselves. They've never been abused. They've never been raped. Nothing like that. Never really been abused. But that fear meter will go off in us. And what happens is neurologically in our brain will get mapped into a hypervigilant state of fear. Okay? Remember, confusion always comes with fear. So we don't know why. We turn 18, we go out in life. We have no idea why we're operating in ways that don't serve us. We really don't know why. It's neurological. They have done tests that show that even a baby, when it's in the belly of a mommy, is if there's a famine in that country, if there's a lot of drama that's going on in the household, the brain is already getting mapped for fear. So we have this fear meter going off. So what happens when our brain gets mapped that way? What do we need to do? We need to remap it to a place of peace and confidence. And what we have found is the energy of getting love in our life, love in a very particular way, which is what we call real love, will actually remap our brain. It'll cause us to settle down. It'll cause us to be more focused. It'll cause us to be more loving, therefore more happy. We're not constantly in a state of panic. You'll notice that if you date, when you're not dating, you feel a little bit better. When you start to date, you feel all this fear. All this stuff will start to rise up in us. It's all of our past programming. And our brains have actually been mapped for that fear. Next slide. Okay, so we talked about imitation love. These are the things that we go after to minimize our pain. So remember, we're driven by our pain. Everything we do unconsciously is trying to eliminate our pain, our past pain. Praise, power, pleasure, and safety. So you can see that in a multitude of ways in many people's lives. The more you practice real love, you can spot it in someone in 5 minutes when you spend 5 minutes with someone, what they're going after. Okay? Depends on how long you've been practicing this, you can spot it. When you can spot that, you can see they need love. That's the key, how to spot when people need to be loved. So praise can look, let's go to next slide. Imitation love. In the absence of real love, we attempt to fill our emptiness with combinations of imitation love, which is conditional and comes in 4 forms: praise, power, pleasure, and safety. No matter how many substitutes we acquire, we remain empty, alone, and afraid. So while we're going out there and we're wanting to be happy, we keep repeating same patterns over and over again, trying to get imitation love to ease our pain. We end up staying empty. So we have to get out of these patterns. At best, imitation love provides temporary relief without fixing the problem. At worst, it allows us to get by and keeps us from looking for the real love that will eliminate our anger, confusion, and pain. When we don't have enough real love in our lives, the resulting emptiness is unbearable. We don't even know this is going on. That's the prison that Greg is talking about. We don't really even know we're doing this. And we think it's okay, but it's actually causing us more pain. So praise. Let's go to the next slide. Power, pleasure, safety. Let's go to the next one. We're going to go through those and describe them a little bit and how they show up. So when you have relationships that fail, it could be at the office, it could be wherever, it doesn't matter. It's not because people are bad. And my mom was famous for saying this to me, and I love her for this. People are not bad, they're just broken. Love them anyway. My mom said that to me my whole life. I was like, wow. She was teaching me real love. She didn't know it, but she was. So most of our relationships fail because they're lacking the one thing that we have to be breathing and happy and loving, which is we need to have real love in our lives. Both people came to the relationship empty, and most of the time it's because they were equally trading some good imitation love with each other. So it seems to work for a while, and then the honeymoon phase is over and it collapses. Next slide. Fight or flight. All we need is love. The Beatles. Okay, so when we're in that hypervigilant state of fear, you'll notice this will kick in. It's either flight or fight. That's how we operate in the world. Next slide. Okay, actually, I thought some of my slides were going to go into the imitation love. Let's talk about the imitation love. Okay, so praise, power, pleasure, safety. There's like 50,000 variations on the theme. But you can see the overachiever, who's a CEO making $500,000 a year, in as much pain as the guy that ends up in the gutter. The guy that ends up in the gutter is looking for safety, terrified of the world, terrified of all the pain that he's ever gotten, doesn't want to be near anyone. Or the guy that is in so much pain that he's got to go for so much praise, power. Okay, we use it in a lot of different ways. Women can use sex for power. We get cute, we get sexy, we get praise for being pretty. So praise can be used in a lot of different ways. We praise our kids and end up making them praise junkies. Okay, so they learn that the way that they get to feel good about themselves is by doing good deeds, getting good grades, being good, so they don't feel loved by that. So really it looks like, whether you're messy, whether you don't get good grades, I love you anyway. That's the message that everyone needs to hear, so we're not jumping through hoops to try to get that praise. Power. People are constantly attacking, controlling, trying to get you to do something for me. If you do that, you'll prove to me you love me, right? Can't feel loved by that. Praise, power, pleasure. Pleasure is a big one. I'm a pleasure junkie. My whole life it was a lot of power, controlling, angry, and use pleasure to ease my pain. And I tried all the different things you can. Drugs and sex and all the stuff. It didn't work. Safety. So running. A lot of people will isolate themselves, shut down, not be able to connect intimately with anyone else. So we use those, we go after those four things to ease our pain. How we go after them, there's vehicles that we use to go after them. These are called the getting and protecting behaviors. So we talk a lot about this in Real Love because these are the very, what do we do different? Okay? This is where we get to look at what are we actually doing that's causing disconnect in our relationships. Getting behaviors, protecting behaviors. When we are afraid, we protect ourselves, and we're protecting ourselves everywhere in all kinds of ways. Lying. Actually, let's go to the next slide. I think it's on the next slide. Next one. Okay, lying. Anytime we do anything, this definition of lying, this is how we will use lying. Anytime we do anything to get anyone else to like us. Does anybody do that? Does anybody go on a first date and look really hot and really good and your best? Okay? We all do it. By accentuating our positive physical, mental, social, or occupational qualities, we are lying. That's the getting behaviors. Anytime we hide or diminish our mistakes, flaws, or fears to avoid people withdrawing their approval, we are lying, protecting. Here's some subcategories to give you an idea of what they look like. Bragging, false praise, not taking responsibility, pretending to be someone we aren't, spending too much time on appearances, modifying what we say or do to please another. Ooh, we do that a lot. Not telling the whole truth about our mistakes, only telling the good or bad things. I want to preface this. If you guys have questions, it's okay to stop me, okay, as we go throughout this. Feel free to ask about these as it applies in your own life. Next slide. Attacking. Let's go to next slide. Attacking. Anybody an attacker? Has anybody ever gotten angry? They want the handouts now. Can we stop and take a moment? And anybody that's got any of the hosts that has getting and protecting behavior sheets, go ahead and take a second and pass them out. It's fine. A little light, maybe. You have to learn to do it in the dark. Does everybody have one? Can you read it? All right, attacking. Attacking and anger is one of the biggest behaviors that we use when we don't like what someone else does. We'll want to control their behavior to please ourselves. It's what we call in real love me, me, me. I'm in me, me, me when I'm no longer caring about your happiness and all I'm caring about from a very selfish, self-centered place, I'm caring about what you can do for me. So attacking looks like this. We're attacking people when we attempt to modify their behavior with fear. God, that sounds so awful, doesn't it? But literally we do it every day. And we wonder why our relationships go south. We frighten or intimidate people with anger, authority, physical intimidation, guilt, and so on. That's getting. Anger, and this next part is important. If we have been in a lot of pain our whole life, we end up tanking down into fear, despair, powerlessness, depression. Anybody ever felt depressed? Anybody ever felt like, oh my God, what do I do to get out of it? We're going to teach you how to get out of that. So what happens when one of the worst feelings we can ever have is that fear and that sense of powerlessness, like we don't have control over our lives. So what would make sense? Get control over it, right? We use power to get a rush of feeling like for just that one moment, I'm going to feel a little less powerless. I'm going to feel a rush of power. I'm going to feel like I'm in control because that feeling feels so terrible to feel like you're not in control of what's going on because that pain's going to come rushing back in again. So we get a little rush of power from that. And then we feel less helpless and afraid. When other people are trying to get something from us, imitation love, we can often get them to stop by attacking them. That's our protecting. So here's some subcategories. Anger. Irritation. By the way, when you're irritated with someone, are you loving them? No, you're only thinking about yourself, right? Ew. That's a technical term. Anger, irritation, feeling hurt. We always feel justified in feeling hurt. Some of you are going to look at that and go, but wait a minute. I have been hurt, right? Still, if you can see others as the only reason why they're behaving the way they're behaving is because they're in pain, it's not even about you. They're not doing it to you, they're just doing it. They'd slot somebody else in that position and they'd still be doing it. It's not about you. So feeling hurt. Expressing disappointment. Anybody do that? Criticizing others? How many of you are so nice you just do it in your head? Right? How many of you are judgmental? Right? We go around judging all the time and it's not loving. That means I'm not seeing that they're just in pain. That's why they're doing what they're doing. They have no idea how to get out of it, and I just happen to be near them. Insisting on being right. How many times have you had an argument? Many times in our lives, right? You just want to be right, right? Right versus loving. What a choice. Size and other nonverbals. Passive aggression like being late or forgetting to do something. Do you realize this is an attack on another human being? Passive aggressive, forgetting to do something, being late or forgetting to do something, it's actually attacking. So if you think about the getting and protecting behaviors, and we'll kind of continue to go through the definitions of all of those, think of it this way. Think of it like, and we wonder why our relationships fail, think of it like you've got a baseball bat, okay? And on the baseball bat is engraved me, me, me on one side. And on the other side it says, I don't love you. So every time we use one of these behaviors with another human being, we're taking a baseball bat and going, whack. And they feel it. They actually feel it. That's why our relationships will start to degrade. Because now we're on what's in real love we call the field of death. We're just boxing it out. And we have to learn how to do it a new way. So when I'm swinging that baseball bat, the only concern I have is for me at that moment. I just now stopped loving you. The definition of real love is I'm caring about your happiness. When I'm in me, 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 I can't be caring about you. So if you ever meet someone with a lot of these behaviors going on, you can get rid of your expectation that they can love you. You can immediately see it, and that will help you to know who you want to get in relationship with. If you can see people that have these behaviors, you know they're in a lot of pain. The more up close and personal you get, the more they're going to be swinging that baseball bat at you. Next slide. Oh, defending ourselves. Did I miss that one? So why is defending ourselves a behavior? Dwayne, why is defending ourselves? Stand up. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a counterattack. It's a counterattack. So let's say I'm in relationship with you, and you come to me and say, you never listen to me. And I go, at times you're right. There are times when I'm really not listening to you. Now notice I didn't just lay down like a doormat, but really at times I'm not listening to her. She's right, even if she feels like it's all the time. But what do we have to battle with after that? Could you tell me more about what that feels like? Notice now I'm loving her. Instead of thinking and defending myself, tell me, how does that feel when I don't listen to you? Yes. Was there a time in the last week I didn't listen very well? Because what you have to say is really important to me. Now we have somewhere to go. We're listening to each other. Okay, good question. So, yeah, defending ourselves, that's a really big one because everyone feels justified to defend themselves. What am I trying to do? When you're attacking me and it's hurting, I'm trying to diminish my pain, so I'll attack you back and say, stop. No, I don't. Now we have nowhere to go. So you don't have to acknowledge things you don't do, and that gets, into more questioning. But if there's some truth in that, yeah, I really care about you so much. I've gotten out of my pain so much that I can be with yours. In this moment, you have pain. But if I'm in pain at the same time, there's nowhere to go here. We got to get out of our pain. So we can give love at the moment when our partner needs it. Next slide. Next slide. Acting like a victim. Ooh. This actually is at the root of all of our behaviors. So Greg Bear wrote a book called Freedom for the Soul, and it'll knock your socks off. The whole entire book is dedicated to every single way that we use victimhood in our lives, and it's just rampant. It's everywhere. If you act like a victim, you can always find someone that will give you sympathy and listen to your sad story, and that's what keeps you stuck. Victimhood causes us a slippery slope. The second that we feel victimized, we go right down to anger, and now we're on the field of death again. So, victim, mantra, 3 key phrases. Look what you did to me. Anybody ever said that? Look what you should have done for me. And it's not my fault. Okay, so we use guilt and obligation to persuade people that we deserve more than we're presently getting. So why do we do that? If I'm void of love in my life and I'm really feeling a lot of pain and I'm desperate, If I go to you and cry about what he did to me, you're going to give me something, because you will look like an ogre if you don't sympathize with me, right? That's not really loving me. You could say to me, but you chose to be with him. What could you do differently? Okay? So there's a whole different lane. That's what I'm talking about, the languaging of how to communicate differently, how to really love someone. If she loves me enough, she's going to help me shift my perspective on that situation a little bit so I don't stay stuck in, now I'm still empty, and I got to go tell Rob the same story so I can say, Rob, can you give me some sympathy too? Because it feels like love. At least I'm getting something. But it keeps us stuck in our same repetitive patterns. Hi, JJ. Hi, Suzanne. Okay, so how can you tell when someone's acting like a victim? Usually, this is here, okay? And they're going wah a lot. It doesn't even matter the story. And a victim can hold a room hostage. A victim can hold you hostage if you don't know how to work with a victim. That baseball bat, you'll be feeling it. Have you ever had a family member call you and go on and on and on about the horrible shit that's going on in their life, and you just go, whoa, I have no idea how to get out of this conversation gracefully. Because if I don't sympathize forever, they're going to get mad, because victims get mad when you don't sympathize with them. And they'll, now you've got to, this is the stuff that we do. We can often get someone to stop. Okay, so for instance, Lisa over here, she's attacking me, and you'll watch people in one conversation shift through all the behaviors real quickly. People who are really drowning in their life, in a lot of pain, can, in one conversation, 30 seconds, shift from one behavior to another. So she's attacking me. She's yelling at me. You never listen to me. And I then attack back. That's one of the behaviors, to try to get her to stop. That doesn't work. Now I can do this and start crying, acting like a victim. If I act sufficiently wounded enough, she might stop, and that's why we use it. Anybody ever done that when they're in an argument with somebody? They'll go from one behavior right to the next, or they'll start lying. They'll go into the next behavior and the next behavior, or they'll start running, which is one of the behaviors we haven't talked about yet, and they'll withdraw. None of this works. None of the behaviors. But within a 30-second conversation, you can move through all the behaviors. All we're doing is being unconscious. We just don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to use that other language. We really don't know how to just love someone and not be defending ourselves. So, acting like we have no control. Victims will... You have to understand that when we get in a lot of pain, and everybody's been there at one point or another, in enough pain in their life where they just don't see options. You just can't possibly see that there's some other way of doing this. Why? Because we didn't have 18 years of really good parents teaching us how to see them to begin with. So now we're stuck in this cycle of the world, it's a pretty dark place, and I just don't see options. So acting like we have no control. There's nothing else I can do. Okay? You'll hear that, and you'll immediately know they're stuck. They're stuck in some old pain that they need to do some work around. Acting like we have no control. This is the biggest one that you can spot a victim. Blaming others for our unhappiness. The only way that we can truly be happy is when we own every choice we've ever made. Now, when you were a kid, it's a factual. You could have truly been victimized. And victimization as a child can look as simple as somebody rolling their eyes at you a lot. That's all it takes. Because for kids, it's not complicated. They hear the message. You're not loving me at that moment. When you're going, again? You got to do that again? Could you stop doing that? That message is very clear for children. So we truly are victimized as children. But now we have to be responsible for our own happiness. We have to own the mistakes that we've had as adults. We have to own how we're being in this world, and we have to make a choice to change it. So, blaming others for our unhappiness, pretending to be totally innocent, grudgingly going along, acting like there's no solution, and acting like we're not appreciated. Next slide. Clinging. Next one. Yes. Anytime we try to get more out of someone, we are clinging. So I'm going to have all kinds of behaviors with you, and I'm going to whine and cry on the phone, and then you're going to spend more time with me, and I'm not going to feel loved by that because I actually just bought your love. I actually just, slimed it all up, and it's not going to be love at all because I actually had to become clingingly demanding for it. So we have all these weird behaviors that we use. Anytime we try to get more out of someone, we are clinging. More time, money, praise, gifts, or love. Using emotions to control another. Here's our subcategories. Needing another person's time or presence to be happy. Anybody have that in their DNA, needing somebody else to be happy? Needing another person to be happy? Yeah? Okay. Excessive gratitude or flattery. That's clinging. Because if I tell you enough how wonderful you are and how I love all those things you do for me, and boy, what I'm saying is please keep doing it. Please keep, whatever it is. And it's like, because I'm manipulating in that way, I'm never going to feel it when you give it freely, whether you're giving it freely or not. So it gets really skewed when we have these behaviors. Talking on and on to get and keep attention. Do you know anybody that girlfriend you go to lunch with and they just talk on and on and you feel like you can't get a word in edgewise and you walk away and you're just drained. You're just drained. They took a baseball bat to you. So we got to make decisions of who we spend our time with. So if you think about it, if you've had like 50,000 hits of unlove in your life, especially from our childhood, how many more can we take? We're already trying to minimize our pain. We do it in these ways, but we need to do it in a good way, which is surround ourselves in that immersion with people who can love us on a regular basis in a very particular way, that way where you're lovingly going to help me get unstuck from my past pain by saying, do you see this, Sharon? Okay? But she has to be full. She can't be in a mode where she's like, oh my God, I can't listen to her anymore. And now she's going to whack me back with her baseball bat. It just doesn't work. We have to stop that. So how do you find loving people? We're going to provide you those resources here today of how you can get out of this stuff. Anybody done this last one? I need you. Oh, it's the language of love in America. I guess the world. I need you. Sally, I love you so much. What am I saying to Sally when I say that? Keep being there for me. For me. Most of the time when people say I love you, that's what it means. The definition of, I like how you make me feel, keep doing it. It's all about me. I'm not thinking about how I can give love to you. So the words we use are just country song. Sorry, Shane. Running. Oh my gosh, I was a big runner for many years of my life. My life with my parents was very difficult. So at the age of about 20 years old, I put everything into a cardboard box. And for the next 10 years of my life, I went from location to location around the world. If something didn't feel right, I just packed up my little cardboard box and I moved again. I went from New York to the Bahamas. I moved to Guam. I just kept moving around and going, doesn't feel good, let's run. When I was pregnant with him, 7 months pregnant, I was in relationship with his father. We had lived together for 6 years in Guam. And it didn't feel good anymore, so I left. 7 months pregnant, and I came back here to raise him. Guess what? He didn't grow up with a dad. Some of the consequences of what we do are huge. His dad always was angry at me for taking his son away, didn't communicate with his son because he was angry at me, victim. So this running behavior can have huge consequences in people's lives, but we can run in many different ways. Let's look at running. One effective way to diminish our pain is simply to withdraw from it. We are running when we physically leave, avoid difficult situations or relationships, emotionally withdrawing from interactions, burying ourselves in our work or hobbies. That's the way we run. It can be alcohol. This is where our addictions begin. It could be looking like having drinks every night. Running could look like, I remember someone in a Real Love group come in one time and said, oh, I just get it. Every single time that I'm feeling really emptied out, I go right into my library in my house and I sit and I read spiritual books all day when he's really needing connection and love from other people. So we run in ways that look really good sometimes. There's the overachiever versus the person that runs and ends up being the homeless guy in the gutter. It's all the same pain, it just shows up differently, and it's how we were taught when we were kids. So we can use our hobbies, alcohol or drugs. It doesn't mean that, any of these things in our life are bad. Somebody can actually, just be over addicted to being a marathon runner, feeling so empty, but in those moments while they're doing it, they feel a little better. But they go home, and when they look in the mirror at night, they still feel empty, alone, and afraid. The proof there is they're really not connecting with anyone. They don't have rich relationships in their lives. Those things aren't bad in our life. They're just a substitute for getting real love in our life. Leaving mentally or physically when there's conflict or tension. Some people are people pleasers, and when there's a conflict in a conversation, let's say you two are sitting there talking with each other, and there begins to be some tension, the people pleaser down, be running in place and just agreeing. They're just agreeing. Now they're going to lying and running at the same time. So these behaviors will mix in with each other, and they'll become, we'll be using multiple ones at the same time. So not speaking, oversleeping, changing the subject. Anybody use any of these behaviors? Actively in your present day life now? Struggling, using some of these behaviors? Yeah, it's time to get out of that pain. Next slide. Okay, so why do we want to understand these behaviors? Why do we want to really be able to practice this so that we can understand them? We can understand all human behavior now. People only behave badly because they're in pain. No more mystery. People don't mean to be bad. They don't wake up in the morning and go, I hope I beat the shit out of, emotionally out of every person around me. But it's what we do. And so takes the mystery out of it. Next slide. You understand your interactions and your relationships a lot better. You can begin when you can see others to have compassion for others and realize that they're just drowning. Next slide. Okay, so where we talked about we're in me. When I'm trying to get something for me, when I'm trying to protect myself, who am I thinking about? I'm thinking about me, so I couldn't possibly be loving you. Next slide. Okay, so understanding why you often don't feel loved unconditionally. So if someone else is in one of these behaviors, you don't have to sit and go, why do I not feel loved? Because they're not loving you. They're in a bad place. They're struggling, they're in pain, and you know what? They may not even know it. They're just doing what they've always been taught. It's not their fault, really. So we can then avoid repeating the same unproductive behaviors. Next slide. Now, and this is the biggest part, change the way you see, feel about, and then respond to others. So we have to change ourselves. We have to see in ourselves when we're using the behavior and make a commitment that I will be more happy when I'm more loving. That's our road to happiness. How can I be more loving? And that's the question we want to be asking ourselves every day. If I can see that I'm in one of these behaviors, if I can see that I'm taking a baseball bat to someone, do I want to make a different choice? And what does that look like? And when you're learning real love and you're walking through these practices, that's why we have these wise people in the community for you to call and say, I have no idea what it looks like, what I could do differently. I don't know. It's complicated. It's tricky. And what could I do differently? We can eliminate anger and guilt. So you don't have to have guilt within yourself. You can kind of just sit with that feeling of, gosh, I didn't know that I didn't know. Nobody taught me. Okay. Kind of eliminate the guilt. Eliminating the anger with others. Anger is just basically blaming others for being in pain. There was a time when I sat in this sanctuary and Reverend Michelle did a service, and she was talking about forgiveness and how important the concept and the spiritual practice of forgiveness was. And I started bawling. I was sitting in the back of the sanctuary. It was a Sunday service, and I just started bawling because what was coming up for me was this idea that forgiveness was kind of arrogant. It was like, when are we really going to see that there's nothing to forgive? When are we really going to love at that level where there really is nothing to forgive? You're only acting this way because you're in pain And I also made a choice to stand this close to you. What is there to forgive? Yes, we need to forgive. We need to not hold, grudges against people. It hurts our heart. But really, when we can really begin to understand why people do what they do, there's really nothing to forgive. There really isn't. It's almost arrogant because it insinuates the fact that you've done something wrong. It puts me into a power position as if I'm better, and until I can get rid of completely my ego and say we are all connected in this place where we're trying to understand how to get out of our pain, we're trying to learn how to love each other, the second that I say I need to forgive you, I've now put myself above you. I don't believe in it. I just don't. That's personal for me. Because I can sit and just feel everyone and know no matter what you do, it's not about me. It is about that you've had something happen in your past that has caused you to feel this way. And it's not about me. Next slide. So what can we do differently? Next slide. Eliminating the destructive power of getting and protecting behaviors. Understand real love and getting and protecting behaviors is step one. Next one. Find real love for ourselves. So this is a big practice. This is the part where you go, oh God, do I have to do this part? There's processes that we use in real love for you to learn to spot what real love is in your life. Learn to spot loving people. What do they look like? If we actually had them in our lives, we wouldn't be struggling. So if I go out and I make all these relationships and I'm still struggling, then there's something wrong with my view. I don't know how to spot loving people. So we actually have to learn what that looks like. So we have to learn how to spot them and then go move to Spain and spend some time with them. Immerse yourself in it. In other words, where's a village that I can go to where everyone accepts everything about me for a while, everything I've ever done, every flaw about me, every fear that I have? How can I go find that place and live there for a while? That's what's going to heal my pain. Road to happiness. So in real love, we call it the three-legged stool. There's 3 steps to our happiness. So here's our happiness, and we want to know how to get over there. And the road to getting over there is 3 things. Be loved. So obviously, if we're in pain, we haven't felt enough love in our life. So how do we learn how to get love for ourselves? Like we talked about, the right kind of people, the right kind of love, living in the right kind of village. Be loving. We're not happy. And the moment that I'm angry at you and I'm yelling at you, I'm not happy. Having anger, irritation, disappointment, all of that stuff takes us out of our happiness bubble. And from that place, we're not productive, we're not living to our purpose, we're not any of that stuff. And to be responsible. Be loved, loving, and responsible. Everybody in real love knows that, right? We know that those are our steps to happiness. Next slide. How do we find real love? We have to tell the truth about who we really are. So we all walk around with, it's actually pretty funny, we walk around with a cardboard cutout. And then we say, love this, love this. But I can't feel it because I know you're loving the facade, so I can't feel love. So I have to drop the facade, but that would be very scary because every time I've been vulnerable with people who told me that they loved me, they attacked me, told me, well, why'd you do that? That was really stupid. Why'd you do that kind of thing? Why do you keep doing that? Or let me fix you. So we're not getting the kind of love that we need, so we put this barrier up. And so we have to learn how to drop it and tell the truth about ourselves. Next slide. So, how do we become more loving? So you're going to work on all these steps. How do I get more love for myself? How do I become more loving? And we talked about that. How do we see others more clearly? That's identifying their behaviors. Get more real love for ourselves. Next slide. Okay, so this is the process that heals people's lives. And it wouldn't be without the help of these hosts and these people and these coaches training people how to do this for themselves. Truth, seen, accepted, loved. So here's the basic concept. I want to feel loved. I want to be happy. I want to feel like there's a whole bunch of people out there really knowing me for who I really am, flaws and all, and loving me. The only way that my life has changed but I can even stand here today because everybody that really has known me for a long time, there's no way in hell I'd ever be able to stand here. No way in hell I could do this. That kind of love is what has transformed my life and my son's life. These people sitting in this room who really know me and really love me. So if I want to feel that kind of love, I need to feel accepted for who I really am. I have to be accepted for who I really am. How can they accept me for who I really am if they can't see me? I have to be seen for who I really am. And that means I need to be telling the truth about myself. I need to practice being vulnerable and telling my real truth. My lips have got to be flapping in a practice. So it'll end up looking like, after I practice for a long time, Lisa will yell at me and she'll say, "You never listened to me." And now I'm not in pain anymore and defending myself. I'm a truth teller now. I've practiced it so much. Getting love from others. Now I have love to give her. And I tell my truth. You're right. You know what? I don't listen very well lately. I haven't been listening to you. Now I'm a truth teller. The truth will set you free. How cliche is that, right? But it really is what Jesus was talking about. No matter what your faith tradition is or where these concepts come from, it always leads back to the same thing. The truth is love. Living by truth. So if I have all these things about me, I got all these seeds in my pocket, and I take them out and I'm just scared to death, and I go, nah, I'm not going to throw any of those seeds out there. It's too scary. Or I look at one seed and I go, well, maybe I'll throw that one out there. Maybe it won't grow. Maybe they won't like me. Terrified. If I take the seeds and I have the courage to just throw them out there, I will find some people who can love me. Doesn't mean that all those seeds are going to take root and grow, but I am going to find some people with capacity. And without me being bold enough and courageous enough to tell the truth about myself, I'm not going to find those who can. I'm always going to feel isolated, empty, alone, and afraid. So we provide a place for you to go into real love groups and practice that with people who have proven over time that they have capacity to love others. They practice. They've gotten out of their own pain. They've healed their lives. So when you tell the truth about yourself, notice in this conversation, conflict disappears. What's there to fight over when I agree with her? I'm not agreeing to be a people pleaser, too. I'm just telling the truth. I'm just being honest. You're right. Sometimes I don't listen to you. Conflict will disappear. Next thing. You create opportunities for yourself to feel the unconditional love. So without throwing those seeds out there, you cannot create these hits that you need. We talked about all those bad hits that you got. How do you create the opportunity for these? Next one. Your partner often feels safe enough to tell the truth about themselves. So I can tell the truth to Lisa, and Lisa can say, wow, you know, I don't listen to you much either, do I? We feel inspired to continue to keep telling our truths. Now we're building a bridge and we feel closer together. Defending would have separated us. Next slide. Pearls of truth telling. As I tell my truth, I create the opportunity to find those who can love me. I eliminate conflict. I inspire others to tell the truth about themselves. So if I stood up here and told you all the things that I've done in my life, all the real truth about me, you'd go, wow, I've done that too. I feel safe. I could probably tell that about myself as well. So we inspire others to tell the truth about themselves. And the last one on there was, I can bring hope and healing to a feeling relationship. The second that we start to tell the truth to each other, now we're healing the relationship versus creating the disconnect. Next. Truth-telling relationships versus behaviors that wound. That's what we're talking about. Next slide. Our goal then should be to find real love for ourselves. Second one is to be more loving towards others. So, next slide. The real cause of conflict in relationships is emptiness and fear, which results from a lack of real love. It's not by what anybody's doing. It's emptiness and fear. Anybody have questions at this point? That's a lot to take in.
It is. So my question is, if really
Speak
truly,
real into it.
if we really truly want to practice this in our lives and in our romantic relationships,
Uh-huh.
is it imperative to find a partner who is practicing real love as well?
Robin Zulema, stand up. Dwayne and Donna, stand up. Who are some other couples in here that practice real love with each other? River is with Rudy. Rudy's not here today. Shane practices real love. Chelsea's here learning about it. Okay, how imperative is it? Judy, you've got a relationship where you've got real love that's been going on for a long time. You guys can sit down. These are people who found each other through real love, had disastrous relationships before they came into real love. And I'm talking like disastrous, huge. Zulema can talk to abuse, horrible stuff in her background. She just got married to Rob. So does it make it easier if both people are using the language? So imagine you move to Spain and you happen to meet a guy that's from Portugal and he speaks a different language. Is it hard to have a relationship? I've dated guys that spoke Spanish that spoke no English. It was freaking hard. Okay, like really, you couldn't communicate. Is it easier? Is it imperative that you are practicing real love together? You can meet people who are filled with love and were taught how to be loving. All we're doing is using a languaging so that we can communicate it and teach it to others. It's not like we found something new, okay? There are people out there that are naturally loving, okay? I would have to say that 95% of everybody out there is in a lot of pain. So a lot of people are out there drowning. So does it make it easier? Yes. You're practicing truth-telling and within a framework that allows you a language to practice it with each other. I'm going to tell you my truth right now. Eventually, you're just always telling your truth and you're not having to preface the framework in which you're doing it, the practice work. But if you're in a relationship, Garvin, you've been in a real love relationship. He's married and been in a real love relationship forever.
Yeah, I'm one of the fortunate ones that found one of the 1%ers that learned how to be loving and practice these principles before she ever heard about them, but she learned at home.
Yeah.
And we're going on 40 years of marriage. So I'm extraordinarily blessed in that regard, but that's a rare circumstance. The reality is that you don't have to have, even the language is helpful, as Sharon is saying, but what's more important is that you have somebody that that you are the person who is making a change in your life. If one person in a relationship, whether it's an old relationship or a new relationship or a relationship to come, if one person is practicing these principles, it gives you an immeasurably better odds of creating the relationship that you're looking for. Because as one, if you don't have the relationship already, and you're looking to how you want to create the romantic relationship of your dreams, start practicing these principles. Get yourself filled up. You're going to attract somebody completely different than you would otherwise. Because the people who are out there who are going to be attracted to someone who is dysfunctional and who is trading in imitation love and so forth are going to bump into you, and they're going to see this whole and complete and solid person who is filled with love and self-assured, and they're going to run screaming. Okay? They don't want any part of somebody that they can't victimize or that they can't play these trading games with. So if you want to attract this into your life, start practicing it on a unilateral basis, and you will become a magnet for other people that are looking for those kinds of qualities.
Yeah, so two sides to that coin. If you are unloving, loving people will run from you. I mean, they'll just be like, I'm not going to date you because, you got all this drama going on all the time. It's just very real. So you have to get your own house together before you can really have a loving relationship. But if you're lucky enough to find someone who wants to practice with you in that kind of commitment level, Dwayne and Donna and Zulema and Rob, that it makes it easier. but one person can impact a whole entire family to change. So when I began to change myself, my relationships with my mom, my dad, my son, basically what happened is, when I came and I found real love, we do it all wrong. We try to shove it down people's throats because it's so good. And we, tell them, you've got to do this. And, you should go to a group. And I mean, never went to a group, never made real love phone calls, in the past, I think, and maybe recently. When I said we're moving to Spain, and I began to use this new language, I hate when you talk about my friends are empty, alone, and afraid. I hate when you use this language. Oh my God, it was like, I'm taking you out of the world that you know in Phoenix, and I'm going to come drop you in Spain, and you're going to leave everything you've ever known. And he's looking at me going, I'm not going. I'm not going. He'd come home from a party, and he'd say, guys were fighting, and I'd say, well, why do you think they're doing that? I'm doing what, why, what, like we do in group. And he's like, don't talk to me about that real love shit. I don't want to hear it. In the beginning, and then as the years went by, all of a sudden I hear him in conversations helping others, helping Karen's son, being a mentor for others. And you're just like, whoa. In the beginning, if you are someone who wants to practice real love, Arlene, your husband went kicking and screaming. Same as Shane, right? I'm not doing this shit. Don't talk to me about that. He hates me. Her husband hates me. I got to be the bad guy one night, but anyway, I won't share too much. Whatever's okay to share. You guys doing okay? Yeah. How long have you been practicing real love? Uh-huh.
I've been practicing
I don't think the speaker's on, or the mic's on.
on.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, speak right
now
into
you
it.
can. I've been practicing it over a year. It's actually a year, almost a year and a quarter now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's practicing it. He just isn't ready yet to step inside the group.
He's baby steps.
Yeah.
But
And
how long have you been married?
it'll be 46 years in
Okay,
September.
so 46 years, highly dysfunctional, imitation trading. They were both so miserable the whole time. It's only taken her 1 year to start to impact a huge change in 46-year relationship, because she had to get herself out of people please or do this, all our dysfunctions, and to see it and have us help her see it, to take it empowered enough to take a stand and say, I want to be loved and I want to do this differently. And just like that kid right there went kicking and screaming. Because remember, when I have a dysfunctional relationship with her. I don't, but I do. I'm going to make this up. So I have a dysfunctional relationship with her, but we have a connection. We have a connection that's safe, familiar. We've been trading like this for 46 years, and now you're going to tell me you're not going to do that with me anymore? Your whole world is going to go spinning and spiraling. So he's in baby steps of understanding that he needs love. He's been in huge behaviors with her, but so has she. But she did this. She got the courage to do this. Anytime that you decide to stop trading with someone in a very particular way, especially your family members, of course, she has gotten every kind of help imaginable through this process, going to groups, coaching with coaches, seeing Greg Bear, huge, because you're talking 46 years of really struggle. And so when you begin to do that, the second that you stop trading with someone in the same old familiar ways, their behaviors will get worse until they get better. It's automatic patterns that happen. They will be pissed, spiraling out of control, because although this is sick and twisted, this is familiar. I feel connected to you. So what this woman has done has been really miraculous, and it's taken a lot of courage to step into that place to say, I want it to be different. And if you're not going with me, that's okay. And that's what it got to for her. The love that she began to feel from this community gave her, after 46 years, the courage to say, I'm standing up for love. I deserve to be loved. And I want it, even if that means you don't, and you don't want to go there with me. I'm going to do it on my own. That's a lot of courage after like 50 years of being with somebody. Way to go, Arlene. Next slide. Guess what? We're going to do it just a little bit. I don't even know what time it is. 4:30. Okay, this is good. We're going to take 20 minutes. Actually, what we're going to do, hosts that are doing breakout sessions, please stand up. Just go find a little space in a corner of the room, anywhere you want to sit. And then what's going to happen is you just kind of go with one of them, and they're going to take you just through a little exercises to discover some of the truths about you and how do you express them in a safe place to feel a little bit about what we do in a real love group. No participation is required. You don't have to go to one of the corners. So host, just kind of raise your hand. Keep it up for a little while until some people find you. I'll go silent for a little while. And host, just take it away from there.
I have to go to the bathroom.
No. You getting hungry? We have to eat right after. You can just leave it there if you want. You know Penny?
I gotta go pee now.
Did he turn me off? Oh, good. I can say I can gotta go pee. Nothing. Shut it. Shut it. What? Yes. 20 minutes. You got a break. 20-minute break. Yeah. Okay.
Hi. How are you? I saw you come in.
Did it? Good. Thank you.
Oh, you got, oops, I lost my key. Nobody wanted to go with Dwayne?
I'm going pee.